This is disc number 2.
The letters, scrawled on the small rectangle of paper, blurred. At first, Vlad thought his eyes were simply losing focus, so he squeezed them closed. But when he opened them again, the letters were rearranging themselves, moving about the piece of paper like tiny figure skaters. Some of the lines blended with others, forming new letters. Vlad's jaw dropped, and as if on command, the letters stopped moving. Vlad read the new word they'd formed aloud. Vampire. He couldn't do vampire. Fear of the sun, craving for blood, inability to enjoy Italian food, everything that he really was. This was going to suck. Mr. Otis relaxed his fist and leaned in toward Vlad. His smile, kind and warm at the front of the class, seemed sly and twisted up close. A wise choice, Vladimir. I'll be looking forward to reading your perception of vampires. As if they shared a secret, Mr. Otis tapped his forefinger against his temple and pointed to Vlad, who looked quickly back at the paper he'd chosen and read the word once again. Vampire. There it was in plain English. Could he have misread it? No way, it just wasn't possible. Werewolf and vampire weren't similar at all. He could understand the mistake if the paper had said something like vumpine, but werewolf looked nothing like vampire. And what about the moving letters? Had he imagined it? Aunt Nellie would say he'd been under a lot of stress lately, that it had been a trick of the mind, that handwriting couldn't move around on its own. She'd probably be right. But the entire event, imagined or real, still freaked Vlad out. Now, back to zombies, Mr. Otis began as he returned to the front of the class. Any guesses on what their diet consists of? Morning passed quickly into afternoon, and Vlad entered the lunchroom, finding Henry sitting at the table near the window, waving him over. Henry shoved an entire Hostess cupcake into his mouth and grinned. The white filling squished out between Henry's teeth, eliciting a chuckle from Vlad. Vlad sat across from Henry and slid the sandwich out from his brown paper sack. He bit into the bread, and one of the capsules of blood burst open, spraying the roof of his mouth with crimson sweetness. He swallowed the liquid and finished his meal. After tossing the empty bag and stained, soggy plastic wrap into the garbage, he let out a loud burp. Excuse me. Henry laughed and offered him a cupcake, which Vlad immediately stuffed into his mouth. Sure, human food didn't help him out nutritionally, but some of it just tasted good. Henry asked, So, when are you asking Meredith to the snowball? It's coming up soon, you know. Principal Snellgrove passed behind Henry and slowed his steps, peering over Henry's shoulder at Vlad. Vlad shrugged. I'm not sure I'm going to. Henry said, Why not? You've only been crushing on her since the 3rd grade, and a girl like Meredith you have to ask well in advance. Behind Henry, Vlad could see Meredith talking with her girlfriends. When she looked over at Henry, her blush deepened. Vlad shrugged again. Better to be crushing on her than have my heart crushed by her. Besides, I think she likes someone else. Henry slanted his eyes. Like who? You're making excuses again. Just ask her, Vlad. She's just a girl. Worst thing she can do is say no. But that wasn't the worst thing Meredith could do. She could laugh. She could tell her friends all about how the pathetic pale kid asked her on a date. And word could reach Bill and Tom, more fuel for the fire. Vlad would rather die. Or worse, go to the dance alone. Mr. Otis, who'd also taken on Mr. Craig's homeroom duties, was leaning back in his chair, his feet propped carelessly up on the desktop, when Vlad approached him after the final bell. The teacher wasn't wearing a smile, but more the hint of one. The infamous Vladimir Todd, what can I do for you? Vlad couldn't recall ever having done anything remotely infamous, but he nodded and withdrew the scrap of paper from his shirt pocket. "I'd really rather pick again if you don't mind." Mr. Otis sat up and clucked his tongue. "That wouldn't be fair to the rest of the class." Vlad didn't much care what was fair, only that he was a little more than hesitant to reveal the details of his true identity. He had hoped only to discuss vampire lore with the class, having become quite adept at separating the truth from the enormous number of lies spread by various media over the years. He'd much rather write an essay on werewolves, or warlocks anyway, even though 1,000 words on any of the creatures on the list didn't strike him as terribly exciting. Vlad lifted his shoulders and dropped them again slowly. He had no reason to offer but the truth. "I'd just really rather pick again." Mr. Otis paused with his hand on the brim of the top hat. Then, with an assenting nod, he nudged the hat toward Vlad, who reached in and withdrew another slip of paper. Vlad gazed at the paper with direct intensity, wondering if the letters would move this time. He unfolded it and furrowed his brow. Vampire. Mr. Otis stood, and after emptying the remaining slips of paper into his bag, popped his hat onto his head. "Fate can be cruel, Mr. Todd. I look forward to your oral presentation from a vampire's point of view." Vlad's feet felt like they were frozen to the ground. There was no getting out of this, as far as he could tell. And why did Mr. Otis seem so insistent, so anxious that Vlad tackle the very topic he wanted most to avoid? The answer was easy. Because teachers, no matter how kind, no matter how friendly, are sadistic and evil to the core. Vlad swung his backpack over his shoulder and slipped out the door without so much as a grunt or a glance in Mr. Otis's direction. Vlad thought about Mr. Craig and wished that wherever his teacher was, he was safe and would return soon. "It can't be all that bad. Maybe you just need to shift your outlook a bit." Nellie smiled. Vlad found little comfort in her words. "You don't understand. That paper said werewolf, not vampire, when I pulled it out of the hat. I know it did." Nellie pursed her lips. After a moment of silence, she said, "I think you've just been under a lot of stress. Words don't rewrite themselves, Vladimir. It's just not possible." Vlad wrinkled his forehead and picked at the corner of his English book. "And who wears a top hat? This guy is weird." Nellie sighed. "Vladimir, give him a chance. You don't even know him." But Vlad wasn't sure he wanted to know Mr. Otis. "I don't know, Nellie. Something just doesn't feel right." Nellie flashed him one of her overly concerned looks. Vlad didn't want to argue, and he certainly didn't want Nellie thinking he was crazy. He offered a smile, plastic as it was, and flipped open his notebook. "You're probably right." "This project isn't all bad, Vladimir dear. You can finally get all of your secrets off your chest without worrying about being exposed. And who knows? It might be fun to speculate about future abilities, and you could throw in some of those silly stereotypes just for laughs." She sipped the last of her tea and yawned. "I need to get some rest. Don't stay up too late." "I won't. But Nosferatu is on cable tonight, so I'll probably stay up to watch it." He wasn't sure why, exactly, but the older, the cheesier a vampire movie was, the more it lifted his spirits. Nosferatu was his favorite, as the pointy-eared, bald-headed monster had sent him into hysterical fits of laughter on a number of occasions. Nellie found the movies ignorant and insulting, but supported Vlad's fondness for them just the same. "Finish your homework first." Nellie was already across the room when she paused and threw him another worried glance. "You don't sleep enough." "Aunt Nellie." Okay. I'll see you in the morning." She slipped upstairs and out of sight. Vlad took out the instruction sheet Mr. Otis had handed out and scanned it. Maybe he should get started on the essay right away so that it wasn't looming over him for the rest of the term. Determined to get it over with, he opened his notebook, picked up a pen, and began to write. My name is Vladimir Todd, and I am a vampire. He sat back for a moment, examining what he'd written. It had been easier than he expected to confess his true nature. So Vlad tightened his grip on the pen and continued to write. He went into the details of his hovering ability and telepathy, exploring the question of why he had them. With a laugh, he then threw in speculation on why vampires had no reflection and couldn't be photographed. It was a ridiculous notion, as Vlad had never had problems with either. He'd managed to show up in every school photo since kindergarten, and, to date, he hadn't heard anyone on the yearbook committee complain. And judging by the slew of pictures he had of his dad, it wasn't much of a problem for other vampires either. After a paragraph on how stupid people were to think that any living being could live forever, he paused again and wrote one final line. I'm not a monster. I'm just me.